Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
The Starbucks at South Salisbury has filed a petition to unionize. It's part of a nationwide effort to organize baristas under Starbucks Workers United. Welcome back to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. In our studio this afternoon, we have Brianna Hurst. She is from Hartford, used to work for Starbucks. And also in our studio is Brianna Hurst. She recently was working for the Starbucks here in Salisbury. Welcome to the program, first of all.
Hi, thank you.
So let me ask you first, Aaliyah, give me a sense about the nationwide implication, because there are a lot of them across the country that are beginning to organize. What's going on there?
Yeah, so I think now we have like over 290 stores, or just at 290 stores that have organized and that are now just waiting to bargain with Starbucks. So it's really exciting. And Salisbury came in I want to say 2 weeks ago they went public. I started working with them in the beginning of February, and it's been amazing ever since. I love it. They're so cute.
So give me a sense about what is it like to work at a Starbucks?
I guess it really depends on the person in the store, but for me in my particular store, the reason why I organized was really because I faced a lot of racism in my store, but also there's the conditions in terms of like hour cuts. That's the biggest thing, especially right now nationwide. Starbucks is cutting not only partner hours but store hours too, and everyone's kind of fed up because they can't, if without their hours they can't get their benefits, and benefits, as we all know, are the most important part too. That's your health care, their ASU program. You have to work a minimum of 20 hours. And so if Starbucks is cutting people down to like 14, 12, people aren't going to be able to afford some of their benefits.
Because one of the things that, by the way, that struck me as I was doing some research is that decades ago, fast food places, food, drink sector, they were only about 4% unionized. And now there's something like 28% that's trying to organize. What do you make of that? Because these jobs tend to have people who come and go at fairly quick pace, so that you don't have long-term people who will be in this union for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the growth is actually really good, and I think it's important because any labor is honestly skilled labor. And to be honest, that's kind of the reason why unions are so important, is because it's giving people the opportunity to be treated fairly, even if it's a job that has a lot of turnover. I mean, I don't think that should really matter. I think at the end of the day, everyone should be treated and is in their right to be treated with fair and dignity by their boss, management, customers, whoever.
Because I'm sure that the company would say that they do treat their people fairly. They have certainly this progressive image, right? I
Very
mean,
much.
Why doesn't that translate? I mean, your experience.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can say you're progressive all you want, but if you have rules that are in place and you will fire someone for one thing but then discriminate against another partner for another, I mean, is it really fair? I think Starbucks does have a reputation of coming off as very progressive, and I think they did that because the times have become very aggressive. After COVID, or even during COVID, things popped up socially that a lot of people started to care about, and Starbucks had to either fall in line with that or lose huge customer clientele.
So I want to talk to you, Brianna. Tell me a little bit about your own situation. What happened, and why did you decide to become involved in a union effort?
Well, I used to work at UPS, which was a unionized job, so I knew all the good things that came with unions. And going to my Starbucks job, I was working both at the same time. Going to Starbucks, I would talk to my partners about the union and like all the good things that can come with being a union and creating our own. And soon after that, I was terminated, and here I am.
Was there some reason? Was there a sense of reason why they?
Their reasoning was for posting TikToks on social media, and I don't believe that is a reason at all, considering there's thousands of Starbucks partners who are posting TikToks, and they're not losing their jobs, so why am I losing mine?
What was on the TikToks, and what?
You're just dancing.
Yeah, I was just dancing.
You're dancing?
Dancing with another partner, and
okay.
He also got terminated as well.
So what was it like for you working at Starbucks, particularly in comparison to you talking about how you worked at UPS?
Yes, working at Starbucks, I agree with. I'm really big on environment and partners. So I feel like as long as everyone is, treating everyone, fairly, then and everyone's doing their job, it is a great place to work at. I love Starbucks, but it is hard now that they are cutting hours and taking away a lot of benefits from people, and it becomes to where it's hard to work for a store that's not giving you the money that you need to afford things on the outside world.
Is there a situation where Starbucks is under pressure in terms of a decline in people demanding their product? I mean, has there been a fall off at all to cause them to say, "Oh, we got to cut back," and just in general?
You mean like customers?
Yeah, like I mean, it's if you don't get enough customers, and so you lay people off, right?
I
Or
don't
are you
really
aware of
know.
it at all?
Yeah, I would say I'm not aware of it. I'm probably not the person to ask for that, but um, I don't think that's ever really been a Starbucks issue. I mean, Starbucks now, most of them are opening drive-throughs because of how many customers they have. And during COVID, it became the McDonaldization, right, of Starbucks to open drive-throughs because people want things fast and they weren't able to get out of their cars, and some people still had to go to work. So obviously, they still wanted their coffee if they were going to go to work. They just couldn't go into the stores, and a lot of stores were shut down. Their cafes inside, so all they had was drive-through. So I think like even in Maryland, there's only a couple stores now that are only drive-through, or only cafe, but most of them have turned into drive-throughs, and they're opening more Starbucks now too.
So it has really moved. In your sense, is it moved to this drive by as opposed to sitting and having coffee, as it were? And
Oh yeah, I
I
think
mean,
everything's super fast now. But Starbucks for sure, it's not where people come in and they sit and dine. Like people still do that, but I think most of the culture, because drive-throughs is a thing, is to get things fast and expect it fast. But it's hard to get your coffee fast when you only have three people working the floor, right? Like, what do people expect? But a lot of customers, I think, are in line with us in terms of getting their coffee at a good rate, and they recognize that we're understaffed, and they're annoyed about it too. Um, it's just a matter of will Starbucks listen?
now I also understand that you're not encouraging people to boycott Starbucks.
No, yes, no. I mean, why would I encourage someone to boycott the thing that's giving people the funds? Like, you don't go to Starbucks, and none of these baristas get hours. And we're not saying they don't hate their job. Like Brianna just said, she loves Starbucks. They just want better working conditions, and I think that's fair.
By the way, I was going to ask you. So can people come in and they have all kinds of like different orders of like whether they want half milk? What I mean, how does one deal with that? I mean, it's a fairly fast clip that you guys got to handle there.
Me personally, I actually enjoy making like every drink. When customers come in and bring a complicated drink, I get excited because I want to make it the best that I can for them and surprise them with this beautiful drink. So it does get a little overwhelming sometimes, especially if you are understaffed. But for the most part, it is so fun to make their drinks. I enjoy it every
Yeah,
second.
I definitely think barring was my favorite part.
It was.
I loved to bar. It was cool. Um, I don't know, you can be really creative, and like most people that have been there for like ever, seniors, they've learned a lot of like milk art, like foam art, and then they'll teach you, and then you learn it, and you're like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like I did something kind of fun. So there are fun aspects of making drinks, but yeah, it can get hectic.
And so how have the customers been, and getting a sense, particularly since you've left, but reacting to this effort to unionize, and did they talk about it at all? What?
I did post it to the community on Nextdoor. It's an app for anyone nearby in the community. And a lot of the customers are for it. They're happy to see that we are finally doing something right for our employees and just for the working industry in general. So that's why I'm like so excited to get this done. And
I think a lot of customers are slightly unaware, because out of 290 stores out of the like, what is it, 5,000 that are around, 5,000 plus, I think it's a movement and it's growing, and we're scaling at a good pace, but more stores that pop up, the more customers will know what's going on. But it's not just Starbucks. I mean, Amazon's going through the same thing, Apple too. So I think people are aware of what a union is and that people are demanding, better treatment.
By the way, do you make any distinction between what they call you as partners as opposed to being an employee?
So they call us partners because we all get shares of the company.
Okay.
So when you get in, you get what's called like a beanstalk, basically, and so it's honestly a way to keep people feeling like their job is a third place, and that's kind of what Starbucks runs on, this idea of it being a third place, not only just for partners but for customers as well. This is you go home, you go to work, and then you go to Starbucks. And employees too, you have the idea of a partner is that you make decisions in your store, but no one's really making decisions. I mean, they have a seat at the table, but it's empty. Up in headquarters, and the seat's supposed to resemble the partners that are in the stores, but because it's empty, no one's really talking, and then they're not really listening to us. And if you're going to call us partners, then you might as well actually treat us like them.
When you say the seat is empty, what do you mean? Is there supposed to be a representative, or there are no representatives?
They keep the seat open as a metaphor for the idea that partners are there, but no one's ever in that seat. So what we ask is put someone in that seat.
And this is an official position? I mean, official position that one would fill? Is that
I wouldn't say
or
it's
is it
definitely
just
official, but it's just like the metaphor, like fixing the metaphor. If you're going to say that you have this seat there open for partners, okay, well then actually put a partner up there, actually listen to a partner, actually have transparency with partners. I think that's really what it is.
Is there any system, by the way, for feedback from the employees to the company? I mean, is there any communication back? I mean, some companies, ask for suggestions or whatever it is, or have feedback. Is there anything like that at all, or do you know?
I mean, we have a partner relations that you can call and kind of make complaints to, but and none of my complaints have ever been handled.
So you both look very young. So, Brianna, so how old are you, and what are your aspirations?
I am 21, and aspiration.
Like, what do you want to be? I mean, are you going to school or?
I did want to go to school through Starbucks because it was free. Unfortunately, didn't get that. I do. It's a really good question. I think most importantly, I do just want to be an influencer. And that's why I make TikToks. I want to show the world all the good things and just make people happy. I think that's one of my biggest things, and this is just like a really letdown. It's kind of just made me go but I'm still trying to stay positive through everything. But yeah, my goals is just to make a difference in the world. At the end of the day, I mean, there's so many things out there, but it feels like nothing's getting changed. It's still consistent with how it is, and I just want things to be better and life to be better.
Oh, you still have lots of time. What about you?
So I'm 23. I guess my aspirations really are to continue the fight. I love organizing. I never had a passion for it until I joined, and I love being able to meet people like Brianna and work with her and her store and all the other stores that I work with in Maryland, and being able to give people that voice. And stand up for people who haven't been able to stand up for themselves. I think that's really is my passion now.
Well, we were speaking with Brianna Hurst. She is a former employee of the Starbucks here in Salisbury. Also, we have Leah Bassetti, who has also once worked for Starbucks, and I believe it's Harford County. Yeah. We appreciate you both stopping by and chatting with us this afternoon.
Of course. Thank you. We appreciate it.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Despite the economy adding 517,000 jobs last month, and with an unemployment rate of 3.4%, the lowest in decades, there is still uncertainty within the local business community about what the future may hold. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. A recent survey by Salisbury University's Business, Economic, and Community Outreach Network found that expectations have been significantly lower. John Hickman is the director of Beacon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Don.
So give me a sense overall as to where we are in terms of what businesses think they expect over the next 12 months.
So the business expectations over the next 12 months are they expect either conditions to be worse, about 37% of the respondents, or the same as they are currently, about 37%. And that's in contrast to this time last year, about 47% of the respondents thought things were going to be better. That dropped off the cliff, so to speak, in June when we did the survey this summer, and it was about 47% thought things were going to be worse. That number's moderated some. Those moved into things staying the same.
So what are the factors that involved in these expectations?
So cost overall is the biggest factor. So whether it be the cost of labor, the cost of supplies, inflation in general, the cost of borrowing, so the cost of financing, things are driving people to be concerned. But I think the greatest thing is people look at overall inflation, and there's a concern of how that's going to impact consumer spending in their specific industries.
So when it comes to inflation, because we've seen it come down now over the last few months in any event, is there an expectation that it'll continue to that drop, or what sense do you get about that?
I think people are really uncertain. There's a concern. Fuel prices have come down, but still relative to a year ago, fuel prices are higher. Utilities higher than they were a year ago, and labor cost is one of those what you think of as a sticky cost. So once wages go up, there's very few opportunities where the same position is going to hire and lower. Maybe if you're hiring, so one of the things we may see in the coming half of year may be that overall wage inflation is down, but that wage rate is still staying up there.
Because we have a number of states across the country, for that matter, even I think here in Maryland, where there's a push to raise the minimum wage, right, to maybe $15 an hour,
right.
And in some corporations, for instance, in particular retail, they are doing that on their own. So it does seem as if there's this push from down below to push these wages up.
Right. Well, so the factor of that is we just talked about low unemployment numbers. So if there's a smaller pool of people looking for jobs, there's a few things you can do to try to attract them. The most common, the most used one is to say, well, I'll offer you a higher wage, whether it's an hourly wage or a salary, than what you're earning now, in an attempt to have you fill a position that I have that's open.
Does that also apply to things like, for instance, offering better benefits? So do you see that coming across the line?
Better benefits may come in. Right now, that hasn't been a big driver. But we did, in this survey, we asked how they saw not the cost of employees, but the cost of wages and benefits. And so that's what people were responding to.
So now we are at least about maybe a year out from the major portion of the pandemic. What kind of impact have you seen that have on where we are now?
So relative to where we were a year ago in when the pandemic was first winding down, we're seeing that businesses are getting back to normal. People's spending patterns are coming back into normal. They're out. People are traveling more. So we're seeing some normalization of that. But the labor market, that's one of those things, as I said, you have sticky wages. You have people who may have decided to retire early. They're not necessarily dragging back from that decision to retire early. People who've made other lifestyles changes who may say, if it was a two-earner family, and decide we're going to make that change to be a one-earner family or 1.5 earner family. Those aren't rolling back as quickly as people's going out to restaurants has rolled back.
Because one of the other things that people suggested that as a result of the pandemic, that many workers are reassessing whether or not they want to go back to the job they once had, maybe move on to something else instead, and given the tight labor market, may at least give them advantage to at least maybe reassess where they are.
Right, and so that's part of that churn. And where it's most pronounced, and this is where hiring is finally starting to catch up, was people who were in service jobs. They may have decided, well, I'm not sure I want to go back to that stress. They're starting to re-enter those markets, but there was a long delay in the service industry jobs.
The other dimension, by the way, to the pandemic has been remote working conditions. That is, that people mainly working from home. Do we see people going now back into offices, or has there been some shift away from that, at least for some workers? What are you seeing?
So in our survey, we asked that. It was a question we asked this year that did your company during the pandemic or until now institute remote work as part of their operations? And only about 25% of the respondents said that they did. Of the ones that did do remote work, we also wanted to know, are they hiring local workers who just happen to be working from home, or are they going to other parts of the state of Maryland or another state? The majority, probably 75 to 80% of the workers are somewhere on Delmarva that the local firms were doing. But we asked, the other question in there was, did you implement this, and did it help you address some of your labor shortages? And they did find, the respondents did, not a strong majority, but 55 to 60% said, yes, it was helping them with filling those job openings.
By the way, do you see particular characteristics of the economy here on Delmarva? I mean, one of the things that's observations been made is that sometimes we're slower to get into the recession and slower to get out of it, as it were. Do you see, what kind of trends do you see there?
So we traditionally will lag a little bit of the state. Again, we've got a smaller economy. We've got
Right.
a lot of service jobs, but also if you look at our underlying business dynamics, we've got a lot of governmental jobs which don't switch as often. We have businesses that do manufacturing, and so sometimes they have long-term sales contracts. So we don't see quite as big a jump until that happens.
So, looking forward, the expectations there are still uncertain as to what might happen. And are there any particular sectors that expressed more uncertainty than others, or?
No, across the board, most of the sectors had the same. As we looked at, of course, our respondents were reflective of the private businesses here. A lot of people in accommodation and food services, retail, construction was the majority of the respondents in those three groupings. So they've got we were talking about remote work. There's not a lot of remote construction workers.
Right.
There's not, so that reflected itself through there. Now, longer term, we also asked, this is the positive thing. I wish I'd gotten to do this right off. Of the respondents, we asked the question, in 5 years, do you see yourself operating in your same location? And 86% of the respondents said they would be. And even better, 75% said that they would be the same size or larger 5 years from now. So there's an optimism that the business owners that are there, that they're going to survive this downturn, that they'll make the adjustments necessary, and 5 years from now, they're still going to be operating.
But what do they make, by the way, of these job numbers, do you think? I mean, we had some phenomenal job numbers. Obviously, the Biden administration certainly touted them, and the last figure is certainly astounding. But we've had a fairly rapid growth. Obviously, we're coming out of that pandemic, but these seem to be awfully large numbers.
So, yeah, but there's a lot of job openings. Mm-hmm. So you have firms, anyone who, I use the example, anyone who's been to a restaurant in the last year has seen that their server is very hairy. They're serving more tables than they might have. If you go into retail establishments, you may notice that there's fewer people helping you find your product on this floor. So businesses are still recovering to bring back to the level that they might want to be staffed at.
Is there any reaction to the kinds of things that we're now seeing go on in Washington? Obviously, we have this great debate over the debt ceiling, whether that's going to happen or not. Probably not, but nonetheless, it does create a lot of uncertainty. Fights over the budget, that kind of thing, sort of certain dysfunctional quality, I think, about Washington. Concerns about that at all?
That didn't come up in our survey, and we have an open question. There wasn't any questions about that. Now, the question on the debt ceiling, that was an issue in December when we conducted this, but you do see concerns in the respondents on issues of the cost of borrowing. So if the issue of the debt ceiling drives up interest rates, or for borrowers, it's one of the concerns businesses have had already.
Well, what do they make of, say, the Fed that seems to be inching up in order to deal with inflation? We'll see how long that lasts. I mean,
we didn't ask that question. So the again, the Fed's pushing those rates. Now, this is where I think we said, the business is looking that things are going to be the same, or we asked the question about a recession.
Mm-hmm.
So the largest number of people said that they think that the country's going into a recession. But if you combined the numbers of people who responded that the economy is going to be slowly growing or stagnant, that's actually higher than recession. And that's where the Fed's targeting. The Fed's saying we want what's called a soft landing,
right?
Which means the economy doesn't stop growing, but it's not on a growth spurt that we've seen.
So we're finally. So do you get a sense then that businesses are somewhat optimistic, at least, as going into the next year?
Going into the next year, I think that they're concerned and there's some pessimism. If you look past the next year, I think is when you see businesses probably expanding their optimism. The concern, again, those costs that businesses are incurring, they see their same customers. So, for example, if you're in the hospitality industry and you're used to your customers coming in for a 7-day vacation, if their fuel oil spending this winter is up, or their electricity or their cost for food has gone up, they say, well, we're going to cut back to a 5-day vacation. Or when we go on vacation, we're going to eat out less often. So those are concerns that come in through the hospitality industry. Same thing in the retail industry. If people are spending more in one place, they may decide, well, we're not going to buy a new sofa.
And tourism, I assume the same way. They expect maybe a downturn. What sense do you get about that?
I think tourism is in general looking at something being similar to what they've had in the last year. But again, that caution, that concern that businesses have looking forward is, okay, we're not saying that we're going to blow the doors out next year.
We've been with John Hickman. He is director of Salisbury University's Business, Economic, and Community Outreach Network. Appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
All right. Thank you, Don. I appreciate it.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.